All right, hello and welcome to the Recruiting Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, James Welch, the founder and CEO of Recruiting Solutions. And with me, as always, is my friend and colleague, Command Sergeant Major retired, Stephen Sibley. Sergeant Major, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing outstanding, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic, man. I'm loving the
Yeah.
retired life.
I'll tell you, every time we do these, I just think about how blessed we are to be where we are and just to be able to just jump on here and have a conversation. I mean, it's great.
I'm so grateful for it. And I'll tell you what, though, I was thinking earlier today, as we're preparing for this podcast, you were the hardest working man I knew in the Army. And even though you're retired, you're still the hardest working man I know now in retirement. So how's all your ventures going?
I'll take that, sir. I know you've probably met way more hardworking people than me, but we are. It's a different hard work, though. You know, the Army, hard work in the Army doesn't correlate to hard work in the civilian sector, in my opinion. And I don't know why that is. And I don't know if it's just because our duty is to get up and do what we did every day, but now we kind of have a choice. So we just choose the hard work, and it's weird. But yeah, I find myself just trying to stay as busy as possible. Business is good. You know, I got some things going on right now with consulting that are starting to pick up a little bit, and I'm excited about that. I won't, talk a lot about it, but it is things are moving forward. So I think as we talk about being busy, I think some of the crazy busy will stop, and I'll just have one direction to move in for at least the near future. So I'm excited about that. But other than that, I appreciate the compliment. But you're the hardest working person I know. So what the heck are you doing? How's the business over there?
It's great, man. Working on getting the second book finished.
Oh wow!
It's a lot about recruiting experiences, but really focus on leadership. I then started a new program for Recruiting Solutions. I think you saw it's the Recruiting Executive Mentorship Program.
Oh yeah,
and that's for recruiting leaders across the armed forces. So just got that off the ground today. So things are going well.
Cool. Well, I'm rooting for you. I hope that picks up. And if anybody's listening to this, when we all think we know everything, I can tell you this: take advantage of that mentorship program. I took a look at what you were doing, and I was like, that could help a lot of people out there. I mean, I know these podcasts get launched, and I'd probably be on the other side of that too. Like, I don't have time to listen to a podcast, or whatever the case may be. But I'll tell you that there's some nuggets in here. So I hope people are starting to pick these things up. I listen to the ones you do when you go solo, and there's nuggets being thrown around everywhere. I call it free chicken that I can tell you people should take advantage of. So I hope that there's some leaders out there in positions that, just have questions, don't know who to ask, and can take advantage of the knowledge that you bring to the table, sir. So good luck with that. And I hope that people actually indulge.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And that's obviously the reason I do it, is to help people out, try to share a little bit of the hard lessons I learned. And while we're doing this podcast too, so today we're going to talk about future soldier losses and what we can do now to prevent those deluge of losses in the summer. And it took me a long time to understand that if you react in the summer, it's too late. You've got to prepare in March so that you don't take losses in the summer. And I learned that lesson the hard way. But why is that? And just overall, Sir Major, why is March so important for recruiters and recruiting leaders?
Well, we've hit that turn is what I'll tell you. And then what happens is there's a couple of reasons, right? A lot of kids that join the Army, and, you and I are giving our knowledge from things that we saw when we were in, right? So I want to caveat by saying maybe things have changed a little bit. I'm not out there. I don't wear boots every day. So, for those listening, things have changed a little bit, carry on with that. But I will tell you that in our experience, which is pretty lengthy in recruiting, it's where you hit that curve, and we start with seniors, right? Like, it starts with seniors, but seniors aren't the only ones that, we need to start keeping an eye on as we come into the summer months. And I think everybody knows that, because a lot of these college kids, a lot of these graduates that were like, hey, I don't want to leave until summer. We get that a lot in recruiting, that, hey, I can go, but I want to leave in the summer. I want to go when it's warm, whatever the case may be. But we'll start with seniors. And one of the most important things for people to think about is, like, is my high school senior going to graduate this year? And I know that sounds, low level, but I will tell you that I found it in my entire career, from the time I became a recruiter to the time I retired as a command sergeant major, that in this business, those things don't change. And if we don't check on these seniors right now, and we don't go get those will grad letters, and every single commander listening to this doesn't order his troops to go out right now, no matter what branch you're recruiting in, and say, hey, go into the high school and I want to see the letters, right? I want to know that high school kid is on track to graduate. And that is kind of as baseline as it goes with your high school seniors. But, you know, kids that have been in a depth that aren't high school seniors, right? They may have been doing whatever on their health. Have we checked on their height and weights? Have we checked on the things that are going to prevent them from potentially wanting to still ship or being physically able to ship in the summertime? So I'll pause there, sir, and pass it back to you. But that's what I think about when I think about March is like, hey, we just hit that curve. We're out of the winter, and I got to start checking on all my depths, no matter from what range, senior to college to in between.
Yeah, and it's regardless of, you know, the military branch or the component, right? Everyone has to do this. And what I learned is that, you know, started with seniors that you mentioned, it's important to trust but verify everything. And my first year in recruiting, I was making sure we were just asking kids, "Hey, you on track to graduate? Everything good?" "Yeah, we're all good." And then what happens? You roll around to June, and all of a sudden you get a handful of kids that didn't graduate, another handful that, you know, they're going to have summer school, so that pushes back their ship date. And then, like you said, others, they had some changes in their life, relationships, health issues, whatever. So if you don't get on top of that in March, you can't take actions. And you made a great point in terms of going to the schools and getting what we call a will grad or a will graduate letter from the guidance counselor. I think that's number one. Hopefully that's not the first time the recruiter or the company commander has gone out to the school and is having this conversation with the guidance counselor. But you go there and kind of explain to them what you need, just a memorandum stating that, yes, you know, Jimmy Welch is on track to graduate, or no, we'll graduate with summer school, or not going to graduate at all. And then once you have that information, it has to be shared with the chain of command, right? They got to know that, all right, this he's supposed to ship on the 2nd of June. He's not going to graduate high school. So we either take him as lost now, or we plan to when we're going to take him as a loss, so we're not caught off guard at the last minute. But that's the most important thing I would tell anyone listening is that's the first thing you got to do. You list out all of your future service members or DEPs, find those that are high school seniors, and then begin to acquire those will graduate letters. And that's what I started doing as a battalion and brigade commander. You know, I think you remember this, Sergeant Major, is, you know, I called it March Madness. You know, what I need to happen in March is that every single DEP is accounted for with a will graduate letter. And then we move on to, okay, interviewing every single one of them. And then we broaden that perspective to all the summer shippers after that. But like you said, it identifies any risk early, allows us to prioritize if they're going to be a loss and when do we take it. And then the bottom line is it prevents those surprises. Because what I found is that if you don't do that, if you take their word for it and you don't check, invariably, you're going to have someone who you're expected to ship on ship day and they don't have a high school graduation.
Yeah.
So they failed. You know, it's going to happen. So that's the biggest thing I would mention. And of course, you wait till May or June, you don't give the command team time to respond proactively or to put measures in place, because there's certain, you know, there's things you can do. You can push out the ship date to accommodate summer school if you're not going to be a loss, et cetera, and likewise with all the other issues that you mentioned as well. So anything else to add about those will grad letters or any nuggets from your time in recruiting?
No, I think that's it. I just think that most company commanders just go down to their level. I mean, battalion and brigade commanders are going to be hyper focused on it, but they're not going to do the legwork. Company commanders, depending on your footprint, but for the majority of company commanders, they should have, and they should be able to build into their schedule the visits with the recruiters needed if they want to get super engaged in their future soldier program because it's their program. Then they could probably find time to go out there with the recruiters and say, hey, I want to go and be on ground with you when you do this. I mean, we had company commanders when we worked at the brigade. We knew the company commanders down, you know, in the Southeast that were going to go in and physically do that because they were that passionate about depth losses. And the last thing I'll add on this is the three things you're looking for in March for anybody in your future soldier pool is the three major depth loss types, right? Declined enlistments, medical, and fail to graduate. Those three used to be the top three of these are the three that you're going to take losses in, right? And what you're trying to prevent for the majority, if we're being honest, everybody's trying to prevent that 30-day depth loss, right? Anybody inside of 30 days is what we're trying to prevent. So when you're looking at March and you're looking at the ship dates, just do the math. Who's shipping from March until August within the 30 days? All right. And then go through those three areas. Who's going to decline enlistment? They're not motivated no more. And those could also be high school seniors that are going to graduate. So are you going to engage the influencers and then talk to the influencers involved in that senior's life and say, hey, is this kid ready to go still? So start talking to the influencers, even if you do get the will grad letter, right? I would tell you that it's just that important to talk to them. Grads, college kids, influencers play a part, but not those. You got to start talking about their medical. Are they still motivated personally? And you're going to do that through your Future Soldier training program. And I know we're going to talk about that. So I just wanted to add that we're trying to keep those 30-day depth losses to a minimum or to zero. And for company commanders, that's what you should be hyper-focused on. So look at that and then start figuring out a plan right now between March and the summer, how you're going to prevent those losses.
Yeah, those are great points, particularly with the involvement of the influencers for those high schoolers. But moving on to the next piece is, how do we identify some of those other issues that may be out there? And that's a personal interview. In the Army, we called it an FSAI, and it's essentially a list of questions that, make sure they're still on track to graduate, make sure they're still passionate about shipping, and see if there's any big life changes that may have taken place. And one of the things I learned is that, I began to mandate, just like you said, that company commanders get personally involved and conduct these interviews, in addition to the recruiter having done so. And the reason I did that is because if you do that, if you have both the recruiter and the company commander doing it, they may unveil something that they didn't talk about with the recruiter. It's just another person that can either get that information out of them or even just sense with the body language, hey, there's something afoot here. This person doesn't seem like they're really being honest, and they can draw it out of them. And in my opinion, I think it's got to be done in person for that very reason. So you can lay eyes on them, read that body language, and better understand what might be going on with this person. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
So, the question was, how do you try to prevent these things? And I will tell you that, anybody listening that knows me and knew when I was in recruiting, right? One thing I was really good at, and I wasn't good at much, was IPR, right? The IPR, right, that happens daily within your organization, right, where you are communicating with your people to talk about a million things, right? One section of that IPR that has never changed is the Future Soldier section. And I will tell you that, if you're IPRing daily and commanders are IPRing daily, then they know that they have a duty to check on these future soldiers. And there's a system in place for the most part, I imagine across all branches, where you can talk to yourself through the system about each future soldier and what needs to happen. So even if recruiters are seeing them in person, company commanders, leaders need to be talking to these individuals either in person if they can, or no matter what, at a minimum on the phone, right? To reinforce the commitment. If nothing else, not to just check on them, I'm just reinforcing your commitment to ship. And so some people don't like to over communicate. And I will tell you that one thing that is detrimental to a future soldier program is lack of communication at all levels, right? No matter what type of depth loss you're going to take, more than likely you're going to take more depth losses with the people you didn't communicate with than that you did. So the key to success here is communication at all levels, is communicate. We let these kids go and we don't talk to them. Commanders don't talk to them. Recruiters don't check on them. I mean, if these guys are just, hey, you enlisted, I'll see you in 4 months when it's time for you to ship, or at the end of the school year, that kid's, I don't know the percentages, I'd be lying. But more than likely, that person's not going to ship. There's going to be a small percent that are so motivated they don't need you. They're going to ship anyway. But even them, you still have to stay in contact with constantly. So over communicating doesn't exist in the Future Soldier program. And it needs to happen weekly, daily, monthly. And how each team in any branch decides to do that is up to you. But if you're not doing it, you're going to just prepare yourself for a long summer, because I will say that it's way harder to put people in the Army now than when we were in, especially when I was an actual, like, on the boots, on ground recruiter. It's way harder now than it was then. Why would you invest all that time and work into putting somebody in the Army to stop communicating with them, stop checking on them, stop caring about them and then let them just depth loss, and you're back to square one. So it always blew my mind why we don't put as much emphasis. We put emphasis on it, but we don't put a lot of energy into it down at the station and company level as we should. Not everybody, but collectively, I think we need to get real good at that real quick, especially now that we've hit this corner before summer, to make sure our future soldiers are ready to go.
Yeah, over communication. I was just making that note. That's absolutely critical. I caught myself. I used the acronym earlier, FSAI. That's Future Soldier Asset Inventory. That's what we use in the Army. And again, it kind of has a list of questions, and some of those different topics. We talk about any changes to their job status, right? If all of a sudden this kid's got a new high-paying job, that might influence whether they ship or not. Any changes to the relationship? Are they getting married? Is their girlfriend, going to have a baby? All those sorts of things that may enter into the equation as well. We already talked about academic issues. Any physical readiness? I've seen plenty of times where you have a motivated young man or woman. They want to ship. Oh, but they had a car wreck, a couple of months ago and had to have knee surgery, and you never got that accounted for. That's something that when they show up to ship at MEPS, that's going to hinder their ability to ship. You got to address that. And then lastly, just the motivation, just point blank asking them, are you still motivated to ship out as scheduled? Right. And then there's other things in there, like any kind of tattoos, right, that sort of stuff. But the bottom line is, just like you said, Sonny, just going through and over communicating all those things, and then annotating it in the contact history. So now we have it on paper. We've communicated to them. And just as you mentioned, over communicating with the future service member, now communicating the information to the chain of command so they can take action. Otherwise, it's not going to do any good.
I'll tell you this, and last thing about over communicating. When I walked away from the Army and retired, all of our companies had company XOs, right? The Army had issued us a bunch of lieutenants, right? And so one thing that changed from back years and years ago to more recent years within recruiting is lieutenants were available to come out and serve in XO positions in recruiting. And what blew me away, and I'll send this to my old company commanders, and they know I love them, right? But what blew me away is how they wouldn't just, it's a commander's program, but your executive officer sits right next to you and has plenty of time on their hands to call these individuals and talk to them in your absence, just to kind of help you communicate, if that's what it takes. But man, the amount of times that I took a depth loss as a CSM on ship date just to peel back, and every branch is realizing this. Every leader out there right now at any level that's listening to this can say, yes, I've seen that recently. And you're like, how? And it's because the system's in place. The IPR's broke. The systems in place aren't correct. So put some energy right now, commanders, leaders, recruiters, anybody, put some energy into right now developing process to make sure you're not missing something with these guys. And FSAIs and all these things, they used to do that. But even though we had these tools readily available, sometimes we just refused to use them because not over complacency, we just thought the kid was going to ship. And if we would have just checked on the good ones as much as we checked on the ones we were worried about, right? Red, green, amber is how we used to code future soldiers, right? Based on their propensity to ship and based on flags and everything else. Check on a green shipper just as much as you're checking on a red or amber shipper. And listen, if it's a red shipper and that red shipper isn't going to ever get back to green for whatever reason, holding on to it is just going to prolong the inevitable. And it's going to potentially ruin a training seat for somebody else that's ready to ship right now. So just take hard looks at that. We know mission tends to dictate when we punch the future soldier losses out and all this, system stuff. We get it. But start figuring out right now what kind of summer you're going to have. I'll say it again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I looked at my notes here. I was thinking through some of those common mistakes that we see, from this time period up until summer. And that's both for recruiters, station commanders, company commanders, all of them. But there's a few things I had here. Number one, we've already talked about it, is assuming they're going to graduate. It might even be a kid that's a pretty good student, but maybe they're missing a credit. I mean, like you said, otherwise they're green, but you got to check every single one just to make sure. Not conducting face-to-face interviews, ignoring the parental influence, which is another big one, because plenty of times we've seen that where the parents, particularly for a high schooler, they're going to play a critical role. So like you said, bringing them in the process makes a huge difference. Waiting to report problems, you just mentioned that. You have to, and there's plenty of times too where we've taken a loss. I saw this at each level of my command and recruiting, where I was always a hands-on commander, even as a brigade commander with future soldier losses. And every single one, I'd go back into our computer system and look at all the contact history of when they talked to a recruiter. And there were many times where the recruiter actually identified this person will be a loss for whatever reason. And then it just never made it up to the chain, right? So making sure that, yes, you've identified it, but you got to report. You can't wait to report that issue. And then, of course, the other thing is, this always tends to happen, but focusing on the prospecting and putting new people in the Army and forgetting about the people you've already put in. I mean, that was a wonderful point you made earlier, is you invest all this time and energy to find this person, get them into the military, and then you forget about them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're just wasting all that effort, because unless you're communicating with them, they could become a loss and not ship out or go to another service, right? I've seen that happen. But what am I missing? What are some of those other things that a recruiter listening right now needs to think through, or mistakes that they could possibly make between now and the summer?
I mean, I think we hit a lot of them. I think that what else we need to focus on, if I was a recruiter right now, is how motivated are my soldiers or my future soldiers at the training? Are we conducting weekly training like we're supposed to? Or because the mission dictates, oh, I got to be on the road and I'm in charge of training today, so I'm going to cancel training? You know, how adamant are we about making sure that training is conducted on a weekly basis? What's the percentage of people that actually show up? Is it 100% of my future soldiers, right? How engaged am I in their future in regards to promotions, right? Am I focusing on how can I get all these future soldiers promoted? Am I teaching them how to get promoted? Am I asking them for referrals at every single event that they come to on a weekly basis? How involved am I making them be with the Army, right? I used to see people get extra caught up in like making them call them sergeant and making them treat them like soldiers. And I get that. And that's okay, right? That's part of the future soldier program, is getting them ready. But more so, how often are they attending the events that they're supposed to be attending? And do we do anything else with them? Do we do any future soldier events with them other than just the station, physical training? I mean, what are we doing in our program outside of the normal, just, hey, are you good? Are you still ready to ship? And then hang up the phone. Like, start looking at that. And commanders need to start looking at that and understand that, like, future soldier programs are so important, not just because we need them to ship and we need them to go to training, but they just can provide so many more opportunities for referrals and more enlistments if we just manage the program right and we incentivize future soldiers as much as we incentivize our recruiters, right? These things matter. They want to be part of the community. They want to feel like, hey, this is a good decision that I make. So are you making them warm and fuzzy about their decision the entire process? Or, like I said, are we just forgetting about them? So just start thinking about that. Like, am I checking their height and weights like I'm supposed to while they're here? Or if I'm just like, nah, that kid's good. So do you have a strict policy? Do you have standards in place that are non-negotiable on a weekly, monthly basis? And then are we executing it properly, just like anything else that we do in the military? And if we're not, we need to do some assessments, and then we need to rethink what we're doing. So, I mean, other than that, I think we've hit pretty much the majority of things to start looking for, some of the steps that you can take, to start trying to ensure that your summer is better than others because your kids are going to ship. But then also, how can we start capitalizing on some of these opportunities with future soldiers is just as important, I think. So,
yeah, the attendance and the engagement piece, absolutely critical, right? Keeping them motivated to ship out, feel like they're part of the team. I was just on my notes here looking at some of the things that I have seen successfully executed by commanders and recruiters in years past. And while these are good any time of year, what I'm about to talk about is these things are really good for engagement between March and the summer. And there's a few ways to do that. So number one is that if you are close to a basic training installation, again, regardless of service, it's really powerful to take those future service members to a graduation ceremony so they can see, wow, this is what it's going to look like at the end of basic training. Because there's always a lot of hesitation and fear, because a lot of these kids are going into the unknown. They don't have any parents that served, but if they can see a graduation ceremony and know, wow, that's what it's going to look like, I think it's very powerful. The second one is training events of any kind. So, this is not uncommon. I did this as a company commander, but we would bring a bunch of kids together. We have some food for them, but we would do just different athletic events. Maybe we might have a military more oriented, like pull-ups or carrying people on a litter. But typically it was just like some athletic events. We might recognize somebody that referred a lot of people to join the Army, all those sorts of things. It was almost like an involvement. And the third one, that probably my favorite, it takes a lot of legwork for commanders, but it is a very more formalized recognition program. And I saw this a long time ago, and it was fantastic. Having a formal event where the recruiters show up in their blues, obviously the commander's there. It's almost like a mini, formal or dining out, where you have the future soldiers come. Maybe they can bring a girlfriend or a parent or two. Mm-hmm. But it really celebrates their commitment to enlist and ship out. And then if you can, like if you get some that earned a promotion before basic training, getting them on stage in front of their girlfriend or boyfriend, in front of their parents, and recognizing them. And the reason I say this, what I begin to notice is that when they are recognized in front of the people they care about, family and friends, they're far less likely to quit. Because now they get some skin in the game. Yeah. They've shown that, hey, I'm part of this, and now if I quit, I got to go tell my girlfriend, hey, I can't do it. I'm weak. Mm-hmm. So that's just my 2 cents. Those are some things that I would suggest that company commanders think about. So first of all, what do you think about those? And then are there any other kind of things that they could do to increase that engagement and that recognition?
Nope, I think you hit that spot on. I'm gonna tell you, as I was laughing to myself when you said the whole because again, we think that it's such a big deal to take these soldiers or future soldiers onto these installations and things like that, and it's really not. And I remember my age, right? I joined the Army initially in 1999, and I remember my recruiter taking me to Fort Lee. So he had something going on in Fort Lee. He took 4 future soldiers with him. I couldn't tell you their names, but we all went. And then next thing you know, we went to the PX, and he showed us the PX. And then we walked around the PX, and he showed us all this stuff, right? And in 1999, right, we're all broke, trying to just get out of our current situations. And this guy's just buying this thing and buying that thing, right? And he's like, hey, I'm going to take y'all to the gym. We went and played basketball at the gym. And then he came back and picked us up an hour later. I don't know what he did in that hour, but he probably put somebody else in the Army. But, I just remember, being able to be somewhere as a 19-year-old kid and just see people in uniform. You see the TVs when you're young, and so do these future soldiers. They only see what's on TV, and they might know their recruiters in the area, and that's it. You take them on an installation and get them a little excited about the life. Show them what the barracks look like. Show them where they're going to live. When you start doing that kind of stuff like we did in 1999, it still will resonate today with these kids. You just have to do it. And it's all about the energy, right? It goes back to where these recruiters are putting their energy. And so for the commanders out there, figure it out. There's ways to get this kind of stuff done without impacting the mission, crazy, right? And that's just about time management and how they did. I won't tell them how to do that. That's up to them. But it's impactful. And right now we're talking about future soldiers. And these are things that you just brought up that 100% could help prevent future soldier losses. It's just how you decide to execute them. And so I won't go down the rabbit holes about future soldier events and stuff like that. But yeah, all these things matter. And it's just giving a damn. It's just being a leader. And even though they're not in the uniform yet, it's just caring about them and caring about their future, because that's what we're here to do. Okay, go invest in them a little bit. So, again, it just seems really hard to put people in the Army nowadays. And I don't know why you would do it just to let them dep loss nowadays. It's crazy.
I agree with you 100%. And, and you make a great point, Sonny, is that it doesn't have to be extravagant, right? It can be as easy as is just taking them on the installation, or if you're not near an installation, work with the local reserve unit and maybe show them some vehicles, expose them to a little bit about the military. It can go really far.
Yep.
But it's got to be done.
I agree.
The thing about the commanders too is, you previously said the company commanders own the program. They do, right? I would even argue that commanders at every echelon have to own part of that program. But it involves everybody. The recruiter, station commander, first sergeant, we're all taking part in this. But what I found as a commander, to track it properly, I had to have a system. And when you mentioned systems, that resonated with me, because until I developed a formal system to track all of these future soldiers and to review that with my subordinate commanders and leaders, I wasn't that effective, right? And what really helped me is, I guess I was in battalion command and we were taking some losses. So finally, we instituted a weekly meeting for future soldier tracking. Every Friday at the same time, we're never going to miss it. And we walked the dog on every shipper that we had going out 6 months. Now, we didn't cover the guys out 6 months. We focused on the next 3 months, that 90-day period. And we looked at everything from graduation verification, physical status, any parental concerns, if there were any comments in the future soldier contact history that we needed to be aware of, all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the red, amber, green status to see where they were. And what I would do is, I had the sergeant major was in the room with me. We had our ops folks in there, but I made the company commander brief us on each of those people and tell us, hey, what's going on with this? Now, we already had the information because my ops guys already pulled it all, and we knew, hey, who were questionable people. But it was very powerful. Week after week after week after week of doing this, we all began to know, even if we had never laid eyes on them, who these kids were, when they were shipping, and any issues they might be having. And then, of course, like you said, we can plan for it. Okay, we know this guy's red now. He's going to be a loss. So when do we take that loss? Or is there something we can do to help this kid and mitigate the circumstances so they can still ship out as scheduled? But I say all that to say is that if you don't have a system in place to track that, and you don't have the subordinate leaders and commanders actively involved, you're going to take some losses that you don't expect. So what are your thoughts on that? And then, in addition to the commanders, how were you involved as a senior non-commissioned officer in this process?
So two things. We'll go back to the what did I call it? So one, right? Tactful confrontation we talked about. This is a place where a non-commissioned officer needs to have a little tactful confrontation. And here's why. I'll tell you why. What you just mentioned, we already know, sir. There's systems in place, especially within Army recruiting, right? I'm going to assume all branches do, and I know some do. They're all a little different and have nuances, right? But ours is bulletproof, in my opinion, if you use it correctly. And I'll tell you, this is where leaders listening to this right now will fail. There's a good percentage of leaders out there, what you just said. Oh, shucks, my brigade commander wants to have a call and he wants to know about future soldiers. So, hey, first sergeant, right? If we're talking about coming, pull this roster, send it out to the stations. Let the stations update the roster on the spreadsheet. Send me the spreadsheet back, and that's what I'm going to brief my commander, right? Versus a company commander who's been taught the exact same system, right? An XO who's been taught the exact same system, pulling the roster themselves and then going through and seeing their own updates on these kids because they've already talked to them. So what I found I worked in 2 different brigades as ops, and before I was even a CSM. And what I would find is when we would get these rosters pulled down and we would have to get and sit on the briefs, we'd be like, these commanders have no idea who these kids are. All they know is what Sergeant Welch told them.
That's right.
And that's the problem. For those listening, that's the problem. How engaged are you in that? And back to the tactful confrontation, right? For the stations that are receiving this spreadsheet, it's okay if your recruiters are doing the right things and putting their comments in, to go back to that leader and say, sir or ma'am, I would recommend that you contact these individuals because that's your job. You are supposed to contact them just as much as we are, and get your own update. Now, again, how that gets delivered is here or there. It's just a matter of saying, hey, look, if you know you have a leader that they're not doing their job and they're not taking responsibility for their future soldier program, you already have enough stuff to do and enough stuff on your plate. You don't need to be doing their updates for them so they can go take a call from their boss. So I've seen it a million times. I remember getting on our battalion calls, and I would know which company commanders spoke to their future soldiers and which ones just got updates from the recruiter who already had updates in the system. So that can be fixed immediately at any echelon, at any branch of service. If you can fix that problem, then you're going to force the engagement that's necessary by leaders to future soldiers to ensure they have a better chance of shipping. Doesn't mean 100% are going to ship, but when you said that, it triggered me a little bit because I was like, yeah, in all my years of recruiting, I remember even getting that list from a commander as a sergeant and saying, hey, I need you to update your future soldiers and give them to the commander. And that was 2008, 9, 10. Like, come on. And it's still the same today. So, yeah, I got a little triggered by that one. But, yeah, you're right. The system's already there. Just use it. And I was hell-bent on teaching everybody how to use it at all levels, no matter your rank, grade, or position. Everybody needs to know how to use the system effectively to help keep you in check. And some agree, some disagree, and to each their own. But I found it a lot easier to use the system.
I agree with you. It's and you might recall this as a brigade commander. Whenever we took a loss, some of them I didn't make the call if it was like a legitimate reason, but more often than not, for a questionable future soldier loss, I'm calling the future soldier, and I'm calling the company commander. And I could, like you said, I could always tell. The company commanders will have sent me a form that says, here's the reason we took this loss. Here's what they said.
Yeah.
And then I'll call the future soldier that's not shipping and say, hey, did you talk to Captain Smith?
No,
I didn't talk to Captain Smith.
I talked to Sergeant Smith.
That's right. Just, so you know, but my notes here that you were talking about, obviously the personal involvement of the leaders is what makes that system work.
Yeah.
But it's going to prevent surprises. It's going to allow you to make some mitigation plans. But it's all about accountability for everybody involved, especially the leaders who are responsible for this. So it's very powerful if it's done right. But I think those are all like the nuts and bolts and the things that I've seen to be most effective. And I'll end with this part is, I'd always heard, throughout my Army career and recruiting, hey, as long as you get a loss rate of 10% or less, you're good. And then I had the commander say, well, 5%, that's really no more than a 5% loss rate. And then I began to realize if you take all these efforts, you can get that loss rate to 2 or 3%. You're going to take some losses, right? Yeah. Car accidents, pregnancies, all this sort of stuff. Some stuff you just can't worry about. But if you do everything we're talking about today, you can get that loss rate down so low, and then you multiply that with your additional prospecting efforts, you're going to make your mission because you're not going to lose as many people. Mm-hmm. So I just leave that for all the commanders out there. Get that loss rate down to 2 or 3%. It is achievable. You can do that. But Sergeant Major, if you had one message for recruiters and leaders out there about the importance of March and how powerful it is for the summer, what would that message be?
I think just take everything that we just said, roll it up, and then put in perspective your current situation, your current future soldier pool. Take away from what we said what you can that may help you, like, oh, I didn't think about that. But at the end of the day, just know they're coming. I'll just leave you with that. Future soldier losses are coming, and some of them are preventable. And that's what matters, is that there are some that are preventable, and you need to identify right now within your pool in March, no matter what grade level they are, no matter, exactly what ship date's coming up in the next 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days, but find out which ones can be prevented and which ones are going to be unpreventable, and start figuring it out right now, because if you just wait, then you're going to get slapped in the face at the end of the year, and nobody wants to see that. So, just take ownership of your program, starting at recruiter level with their pool, then station, then company and above, and say, hey, let's look at our pool. Let's take some time to invest in our future soldiers real quick, and let's just prevent the ones we can prevent, and know that some are going to be unpreventable, and it's going to be what it is. And keep them outside of 30 days if that's still a thing. I think it is, but keep them outside of that 30 days. If you got some, Don't wait because, you think you're going to make mission with that one future soldier that's going to lose. Don't wait. Just get rid of them, replace them, and keep it moving. And stop doing all this dang work. It's hard to put people in the Army nowadays just to take future soldier losses because we don't pay attention. So I'll leave with that.
No, it's a great message. And just to recap some of the things we talked about, verified the graduation status in March. Yep. Commanders personally interviewing every shipper, regardless of whether they're high school or not. Everyone needs to be interviewed. And again, you mentioned over communicating. That's the important lesson there. We identify and report any issues that we see as early as possible, allowing us to make those decisions or to mitigate them as best we can. Publicly recognizing future soldiers, making sure they're engaged, getting them involved with events to keep them motivated. And then lastly, commanders having a system in place all year long, but particularly between now and the summer, to identify those issues and monitor red, amber, green status of all of the shippers that are coming up. I think if you do all those things that we talked about, now you're in an anticipation mode instead of a reaction mode. And that's the challenge I see for a lot of people. They're so busy with other things, they don't do this. And then now they're reacting to it in the summer. Yeah. So I think they can get ahead of it. But this is a great conversation, Sergeant Major. Anything else before we close out?
No. Last thing I'll say, I'll plug it. I won't put the name out there yet because we're almost there. But I'll tell you, if you're interested, you're listening to this, and you're interested in the new wave of how soldiers are going to start transitioning out of the military properly in regards to being underemployed or unemployed, DM me. Look me up on LinkedIn. We got some things coming. If you're interested in learning more about it, let me know. Because we got some big things coming up soon, and I'll share maybe next time we get on the podcast. But nope, I'm good, sir. I appreciate you inviting me to come just have conversations with you every now and then. Hopefully it's useful. Again, for everybody out there, look, we're just two old dogs that done it for a while. We know a little bit about something, and we're just trying to share some. It's literally free chicken. He's paying for it. I'm not getting paid, but he's paying for all this software just to give y'all some free chicken. So I would take as many lessons as you can from this. And from somebody like Colonel Welch, retired, who's done it right the whole time. So, again, sir, appreciate the invite. I don't mind coming on anytime to shoot the mess with you. So hopefully it benefits somebody out there. If it benefits one person, I guess it's a win, right? That's
right. It's a big win. But thank you, Sergeant Major. And as you mentioned earlier on in the episode, yes, Recruiting Solutions is available for all consulting and training for units and organizations. But our new program for commanders and leaders in recruiting is the Recruiting Executive Membership Program. And that's some one-on-one time with me and my team to talk about some of the challenges that you're having, offer kind of our advice on how to get past some of those challenges. And it's not to circumvent the chain of command. Certainly would never want to do that. But it's just an outside perspective that's confidential and an opportunity to share what's going on and maybe get some feedback from someone that's, they don't have a dog in the fight. They're just trying to help you make your mission. So please, if you're interested in that, you can DM me on LinkedIn for more information. And then for more information about our training and consulting programs, you can visit recruitingsolutionsllc.com. That's recruitingsolutionsllc.com. But again, hey, thanks again, Sergeant Major, for being here. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your friendship. And for everyone out there, wish you the best of luck. And here's to less stress and more success on the recruiting battlefield. Out here.
Cool.